Alrighties. Well, hi everyone. My name's Nat, Head of Community at Exceptional Individuals, and we deliver these webinars every single Thursday. And this one is a bit of a special one. We're going to be looking at a real subculture of how we as neurodiverse people are represented in the media, in particularly anime. Now, I don't know if any of you noticed, but there seems to be a bit of a correlation between people who resonate with having autism, for example, and those who like anime. Is this just anecdotal, or is there something there? Today, we are going to be looking at how neurodivergent individuals are represented in anime. We're going to be looking about how there might be hidden references, and we're also going to be looking at why the community as a whole resonates potentially more than other communities in this space. Now, I do have to give a little bit of disclaimer, okay? I am notoriously bad at pronunciation. I am heavily dyslexic, so I'm going to butcher every single name today, so please do forgive me. I do have Tim in here today, who is our resident anime person in the team as well, to help steer me if I make it completely off. But feel free to correct me as we go along if you think I've just ruined it. Now, as an organization, our bread and butter is dealing with dyslexia, dyspraxia, autism, and ADHD. But neurodiversity is essentially just diversity of thought, how different ways of thinking is represented, dealt with, seen, appreciated in society. So yeah, let's get to it. Neurodiversity in anime. And though I mentioned neurodiversity is quite a broad term, we are going to be focusing more on neurominorities or neurodivergence, things like autism, dyslexia, dyspraxia, etc. Now, there's definitely more material on this when we're looking at autism and ADHD, but we are also going to be looking at dyscalculia today and dyslexia and dyspraxia, because I still think they are represented in anime, or at least I resonate with those qualities, maybe more than I do in other genres and types of media that's put out there. So a quick thing is, when we're talking about pop culture, this is just things which are known by people. I know a lot of people think anime is kind of like a bit obscure, a bit niche, kind of on the fringes of society, but it is a billion-dollar industry, maybe even trillion, I don't know, but it is a big industry, so it would count as popular culture. And we are going to be looking at the pros of how neurodiversity and how anime is within our community. But there's also cons as well, that maybe the overly stereotyped nature of how it's portrayed might kind of be the only representation that some people receive. So it's just exacerbating these stereotypes which we have grown up with. So is this good or bad? Well, I think it's a bit of both, but maybe you can let me know at the end. So quick fun one here, put a pin on how you're feeling today. You're happy, sad, angry, feeling a little bit sassy, oblivious. Maybe you're just feeling innocent today or embarrassed. Nice, we got someone who's feeling hopeful today. I think that's a good feeling, It's a new day. Carefree, brilliant, excited. I like the little embarrassed one. Oh, okay, we got anxious, and that's completely fine as well, particularly if this is a completely new area for you or if you have other things going on in your life. Nice, happy, that's good. I mean, all emotions are completely relevant today, particularly because these little, I forget, what are they called? Let me know in the chat, what food are these? They're in are they like rice balls? Is that like a bit of sushi and that's rice, or is that something else? I see them all over the place. Either way, they're adorable. Personally, I like it when I see little animated dumplings. So now a question to all of you, what anime do you watch? Maybe you don't watch any, maybe you watch it non-stop, and maybe you have no idea what anime even is. Anime is essentially Japanese cartoons, but it's so distinct, it has its own feel and flavor and kind of, it's more of a style as well. It doesn't have to be Japanese, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong here. Tim, you're in the chat. How would you define anime?
Well, under the definition, it does have to be Japanese because it means animation in Japanese. However, you're right, the Japanese style is often adopted by Western artists. And so I would count that as anime, although it has to be regarded as Western anime. You are correct about the style angle. That's, I think, the main core of it. In terms of the content, that's of course going to be different in the West. However, even if you're separating it into categories, the style alone is definitely unique in anime from other animations. And the other thing worth mentioning is that anime often has a more adult theme. So where in the West, cartoons for adults is a niche, in Japan it's standard.
Okay. So would things like Avatar not count as it was created by Americans?
Yeah, that's correct. So at best, you could call that a Western anime.
Okay, well, I think most of the ones we're looking at today are from Japan, but there might be one or two that slip through the net, which are Western anime. Okay, we've got some good ones here. We've got Spy X Family, My Neighbor Totoro. Look, I'm a massive Totoro fan. Who doesn't love this adorable, what's the spirit animal? We've got Meow Meow Power, Spirited Away. Nice. A lot of Studio Ghibli fans in the house. Bungo Dogs, Attack of Titans. Yeah, I love that series. My Hero Academia, Studio Ghibli, Pokemon, Angels of Death, Howl's Moving Castle, all Studio Ghibli movies. Brilliant. So we've got a nice broad selection here. Feel free to keep them coming if you can think of any other ones that you watch. Watched a bit of Yogi, Beyblades, Digimon, Fullmetal Alchemist, One Punch Man. I mean, there's endless amounts. Genuinely, I have no idea how they create so much of their media and at such high quality as well. So a bit of an obvious question, but have to address the elephant in the room. Do we think all anime fans have autism? Yes or no? And the reason I'm asking this, even though it seems pretty obvious, and maybe it's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek question, is that there is a bit of a thing where everyone's like, oh, if you're autistic, you must like anime. And we are doing a webinar on it today, so maybe. Obviously, no. Only a small part of the anime community have autism, but I think there's, maybe are a bit more quirky, maybe a bit more out there, they kind of resonate. There's a lot of things which make the community particularly wholesome and accepting of those who have different ways of thinking. So would I say that most anime fans are neurodiverse in the sense that they think different to most people in society? I'd say yes, I would, because anime is kind of on the side of Western culture. We don't accept it directly, but it is something which is very embedded. But I can also see why some people would say yes. It depends how you look at this, really. As a joke, maybe yes, but in reality, no. So do not think today that we're making this big statement. We're just saying there is a correlation between most people who I work with, who I know, who have autism, happen to like anime. You let me know. Is this literally just an observation from myself, or is there maybe a little bit more to it? So a question to all of you, and this is completely anecdotal, which means it's just from personal observations. There is some science to back it up in studies, but not really enough. Those on the autistic spectrum may be more likely to be anime and manga fans than neurotypical people. Why might this be? And again, any theory, suggestions, throw them out there. I'm genuinely curious to know. So why do you think people with autism might be more likely to be fans of manga and anime? Or maybe you think what you want about that completely made up. Farzana says, yes, it's to do with imagination. I can definitely see that. Anime is far more kind of surreal and out there. We've got art style, the way the stories are told, also maybe the element of fantasy. We've got facial expressions, easier to understand. Yes, that's a really good one. If you notice when they're angry, they go like pop, or sad, their face is streaming. There's less kind of subtleties, and potentially those with autism, one of the common characteristics of it is maybe struggling to recognize subtle facial expressions or emotions. So I could definitely see how that one would play into it. Now, I know this is a bit of a hard question to ask, and there are a few that I came up with, actually someone else came up with, and I quote and I reference them, and I think it's quite interesting. So Rachel, who's at the top there, wrote this really good article this year, and I recommend checking it out. We'll put it in the description. And she's not recommends, but says that these are some of the potential reasons why people of our community, and I say are because I'm assuming quite a few of us here today do have autism, resonate with anime so heavily. Oh, Tim says, to the point about facial expressions, anime often uses similar to illustrate state. Yeah, definitely. I mean, on this one, there we've got, which of these potential reasons do you resonate with? Escape from reality, friendship lessons, easy to read emotionally, the formalities of Japanese culture, community, relatable struggles, or anime confronts bullying. Oh yeah, symbols.
Mine's first one, escape from reality.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. You know, life can be a bit difficult, and when you're watching anime, like they go in all different worlds, universes, like they create their own whole new space. Like most animes, I think, live in their own universe that you couldn't compare to the one that we live in. I got friendship lessons. I do think anime teach quite wholesome lessons on the whole. A lot of it is about friendship, about togetherness. Easy to read emotionally. We've already mentioned this, but their emotions are extravagated, so easier for some of us to pick up on. Formalities of Japanese culture, that is just, it's a curiosity because a lot of their formalities is very, very different from a Western perspective. And maybe that kind of curiosity of how other people kind of interact is something which we find appealing. Community. Now, we all know the internet is full of trolls and can not be a great place, but for the anime community, on the whole, it seems to be a really accepting community where people can instantly make friends. Like if any of you have ever been to Comic-Con or any kind of anime or manga events, people tend to be really nice and open. Related struggles, a lot of the kind of challenges that the storylines tackle with anime and manga, a lot of us can relate with. And also a big part of manga is always that school setting and always confrontating bullies, which sadly a lot of us have had experience with because being different, for some reason, people don't like that. And maybe that's something we can connect with quite heavily. So these are just some of the potential reasons, but I'm sure there's many, many more.
Sorry, Nat, do you know the anime confronts bullying? Can you just explain that? I didn't quite catch what you meant by that.
Oh, so in anime, they deal a lot with bullying. So you'll notice it's normally very black and white, simple, like good versus evil, you know, kind of nerd gets beaten up by bully, then eventually beats the bully up or overcomes the bully. So it's storylines which maybe people who have a different way of processing have direct experience with.
Thank you.
Oh, Tim says Japanese culture seems to include a lot of routines. Yeah, and we all know routines are something which most people on the autistic spectrum can find quite comforting. Okay, now we are going to look at examples where autism has potentially been a strong influence within the program. Oh, and Tim says also children are often the main character. That is really true. And most of us will know that neurodiversity or neurodivergence is something which most people resonate with children because it's that time of life when we're developing, growing, and the differences we have seem far more severe than they do in adult life. So quick one on these, click any of these which you have heard of before. Now, I appreciate some of these are going to be pretty niche, so that's why I haven't said have you watched or read them, but just if you've heard them before. I'm going to attempt to pronounce them because why not? We've got Aspe-Chan, Sanzanka with the light, and That's My Atypical Girl. Okay, I can see a few of you have heard of Aspe-Chan. Nice. Now, all of these are definitely worth checking out, and some of them do have adult themes, just heads up. So these are some of the ones which either are directly related to autism or have a very strong kind of hint or reasons why you might connect them. First of all, Aspe-Chan, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that shortly, but it's a comic that was created about autism and everything that comes with it. It's actually a really nice comic. It's not very big, not very popular, but it's definitely a nice heartwarming one, which I think I highly rate. Yeah, Fafsana says the word Aspe only, and that does refer to autism or Asperger's. We've got Zanka. Again, apologize for my pronunciation. The main character, a woman the main character in it is autistic. We've got With the Light, the protagonist's son is autistic, and it's themed around raising a child on the spectrum. I'd say a particular recommendation if you are a parent of a neurodivergent child. It's, very heartwarming, and it really kind of connects with the real struggles. And that's My Atypical Girl. The main character has autism, and in the original translation, she was actually called Asper, as in Asperger's. So you can't get more direct link than that, really. A quote I want to do from Robert, who did an article for the National Council of Teacher. He says, manga typically caricatures characters' emotional states. Angry characters are drawn grotesque distortions. Sad characters are shown with tears streaming down their face and cheeks. And that's pretty much what we mentioned. So it has been observed elsewhere. It's just maybe easier for some of us to pick up on the slight nuances of human expression. So as I promised, I want to spend a little bit more time on Aspe-Chan because I think it's an adorable little comic. In an effort to try and spread awareness of exactly what Asperger's syndrome is, this Japanese cosplayer created the comic. And it's cute. They're normally only like a few kind of slides or strips long, but I recommend giving them a quick Google. This one is plain and simple. It was always meant to be autism. You see on here, and I think the first ever strip, it says, hi, I'm a girl with Asperger's. And then it talks about their particular struggles, their life. It shows different elements. It's just a cute little look into the world. So question to all of you, do you think Aspe-Chan is a good idea to spread awareness? Yes or no? So do you think doing comics which are directly related to autism, straight away, is beneficial? Nice, yeah, I can see a lot of you. Nice, most of you think this is a positive. I think so too. Now we're going to have a little look at ADHD. That's attention deficit hyperactive disorder. And my first one is Naruto. So let me know if any of you have seen this. Do you agree or disagree? Now, it could be argued that a lot of people with Japanese anime just tend to be really kind of energetic and very childlike. So maybe you can't make that connection. But there is something which I think there is something there. So in Naruto, she's shown to have ADHD, or at least hinted towards. From the beginning of the series, he often has clear signs of having ADHD. He even has the nickname Hyperactive Knucklehead Ninja. I don't know how I feel about that. Ninja's pretty cool. Knucklehead, maybe not. Oh, April says, haven't seen any full episodes of Naruto, just a bits and pieces in the YouTube videos. Yeah, I was watching some last night. It's a good show, really bizarre. Really long though, really long. So heads up. So question again to all of you. Do you think Naruto was influenced by ADHD? So you can either answer, no, that's just how anime is, or it's possible, or definitely. Now, it's nearly impossible to answer these unless we have a direct quote from the creator, but I think it's always interesting. He shows a lot of characteristics. So was the creator aware of ADHD tendencies, or maybe the people around them showed a lot of the qualities, even though they didn't have a particular name for it? So ultimately, yeah, it's possible. Now on to Sailor Moon. Who doesn't love Sailor Moon? So the main character, who turns into Sailor Moon, often gets easily distracted when trying to accomplish essential tasks. especially if it involves food or boys. Now, again, am I stretching here by saying this is ADHD? Maybe, but overall, I don't think it matters, because ultimately it's along, if we as a community connects with the character, that's all that matters. If you see yourself in this person and you think it's useful, great stuff. So question about Sailor Moon. If she was a real human being, but had the same mannerisms and characteristics, do you think she would be diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactive disorder? Either no, she just doesn't fit the criteria, or yep, you absolutely see it. She tends to have like a lot of energy, but they can be easily drained. She has that profile that we look at about that spikiness. Yeah, I would say so. Sailor Moon is an absolute classic. Now on to Sonic X. Now, would Sonic X count as anime? I don't know. Tim, do you know, was this created in Japan? The Sonic X series?
So Sonic the Hedgehog, the character itself, is definitely Japanese. However, it's very likely that the cartoon is Western.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Well, even Sonic in general, but because Sonic, he spends a lot of his time running around. However, he also spends a lot of time snoozing and sleeping. So he has these periods of high hyperactivity and like really drowsiness and low energy. And that is why I think he does share characteristics with ADHD, because he's not continuously energetic. He goes ups and downs, but his ups and his downs tend to be really extreme. Maybe something there. Though there is like episodes where they explain why he is the way he is. But again, ultimately, does it matter if we resonate with the character? I grew up with Sonic the Hedgehog and I always loved him. Did I love him because I saw a little bit of myself in him? Maybe that's a bit of a stretch, but I do think there is still something there, that why our community resonates so heavily with anime characters. Oh, April says, in other portrayals of Sonic, he was believed to have ADHD. He's very likely to have it in Sonic X too. Oh, thanks, April. I didn't know that. Well, that backs up the point even more. So that's great. So which of these characteristics which Sonic has do you also resonate with? Do you have sudden bursts of energy? Do you find that you're easily drained? Do you get like hyper focused? Or do you think you have low attention when it comes to like things around you? And remember, to be diagnosed, normally you have to have a certain amount of characteristics, and you normally need to have them for a certain amount of time. I would say Sonic always has these characteristics, and he's had them from birth, and he has all of these in spades. He does get bursts of energy. He's Sonic. He does get easily drained. You know, he doesn't run around all the time. In some games as well, he will kind of like need to recharge. Not on all of them, but in some of them. He can also get really hyper-focused. Like when Sonic is in the zone, there's no stopping him. But he does have to meet all his other kind of needs first in order to get in that zone. And he has been known to get a little bit distracted. But it's one of the reasons we love him anyway. So now on some of these other cartoons or animes that I have seen some elements of ADHD in. Have you seen any of these? Arachnid, like spider, I believe, Azumanga, Better Man, Excel, Saga, or Kindergarten. April says, haven't seen any of these. I don't blame you. Some of them I have not seen. I've seen things like Excel Saga, and I watched an episode of Kindergarten, which is actually really adorable if you have seen it. Nice. We've got some of you have seen Excel Saga. Some of you have seen Kindergarten one, looks cute. Honestly, Ria, check it out. It's really cute. It's these like little kindergarteners who like run around causing havoc towards their teacher. Okay, nice. So ADHD in anime. With Arachnid, Alice has, and this is what she has said she's diagnosed with, congenital excessive concentration. Basically, it sounds like a fictional name for ADHD. It might be a real diagnosis, but if so, I've not heard of it. The key characteristics of this character is she over-focuses on random things. So we often talk about ADHD having like benefits and advantage of being really hyper focused. But this one is saying, yeah, I am hyper focused. It just tends to be on irrelevant things. Then we've got Azuma manga is sometimes used to illustrate the difference between ADHD. Then Better Man, the key character in Better Man actually has diagnosed ADHD. It's part of the canon. However, the character does have a lot of other like illness, well, not other, but has illnesses and is heavily medicated. So maybe that's more of a complicated case. And then you've got Excel Saga. Excel can't focus when she's talking, like ever. Now, obviously, we're picking one particular characteristic and we're saying that's ADHD. In real life, no, it wouldn't. You would have to have multiple of these characteristics, such as Sonic. But with most cartoons and anime, they exaggerate a particular element of the person. So take all of this with a pinch of salt. And with kindergarten, the main child has a short attention span and he follows his like teacher home, but he gets distracted along the way. Maybe that's just about adolescence, but the other children don't really act in a similar way. My last example, I believe, for ADHD is Baki from Hell Teacher Nube. And he's like a big monster god. And he says, there is no one with the power to stop. Oh, wow, what did you man? You know, he gets distracted really easy. The classic trope of ADHD in any media is, oh, look, something shiny. It's about getting distracted really easily. Obviously, it's a way oversimplification, but that's the trope which we see time and time again. Now we're on to dyslexia. And yeah, I did spell it wrong on purpose, because when you look at how dyslexia is displayed in media, they tend to go a little bit over the top, really focusing on the lack of spelling or reading. Now, hopefully all of you know, dyslexia isn't just about struggling with reading. It's a very, very small part of it. There's so much more, such as concentration, memory, retention, retrieval. But when we're talking about stereotypes, we do tend to focus in on one small area. Oh, we've also got in Excel Saga, the other female lead has health issues, so they were definitely making health points in a hyperbolic way. Thanks for that, Tim. Now, have any of you seen Ghost Stories? It's like really adult themed. They're well rude in it. Oh, Rhea says, I have heard that apparently the Japanese maker gave no support to the English translators, so they just went along and said whatever they wanted. Oh, that makes a lot of sense, because when I was researching this, they did go out of their way to say in the English translation. And I thought that was pretty weird, because surely it would be the same. But yeah, thanks for that. That does make sense. In it, they said, have you done your homework yet? Oh, wait, you're dyslexic. Done your yet homework, have you? In kind of a Yoda-esque speak. Now, as I mentioned, not all representation is positive representation. So this is furthering along their negative view of dyslexia. But you also have to take the actual media in consideration. This show is meant to be kind of a bit over the top, a bit rude, a bit offensive. And they do kind of they throw everything under the bus here. So for that reason, I don't mind so much. Like with South Park, if they only made jokes about one demographic, not cool. But because they do it for everyone, maybe it's okay in my books. But I think that's a personal decision. So on this one, is it ever okay to make jokes about a neurodivergent condition? What's your thoughts? Like never in the right context, or yeah, it's just a joke, get over it. What do you think?
In the right content, yeah.
Who chooses the right context though? You know, it is really challenging, isn't it? Because for what's okay for one person is totally not okay for another.
Yeah, it depends who it is. But I think it's like, just to say that you exist as a person and exist for who you are. I think it's important that, you know, it's in a positive way.
Yeah,
it's a positive comment rather than never, but not in a nasty way. No, because that's demeaning you.
So I think in the right context, absolutely. And potentially, you know, if the individual who has the condition is talking about it a lot better than say this one where the sister is literally belittling her child, and say if you watch this, you might be inclined to think it's funny and then do the exact same to someone else, you know, who have dyslexia, and just exacerbating the problem. Jane says, the person who chooses the context is a neurodivergent individual. And yeah, I think that's a really good, safe way of going about it. You know, if it's from your perspective, fair play. I make jokes about it all the time. But if someone else made jokes about it, not so cool. And any jokes I make, they're made at my expense and I don't put them on other people. Just because I have dyslexia doesn't mean I can speak on behalf of every single person who has dyslexia. All right, we're doing really good. We're now on to dyspraxia. And for those of you who do not know, dyspraxia is around coordination and movement and challenges in interpreting that, as well as other things. And Pokemon, I think, has many, many examples of potential dyspraxic traits. So if any of you watch Pokemon, which of these characters do you think may have dyspraxia? We've got Piplup, which is a newer Pokemon, but it's one of, I want to say May. It's May's May's Pokemon. We got Gligar, which is one of Ash's characters, and Psyduck, which is one of Misty's character, or Ash, who I appreciate is not a Pokemon, but in the early series, he is a bit of a klutz. Okay, nice. Most of you have picked Psyduck, and I imagine because that is the one you know of. No, I don't really know the other characters that well, but first gen is the only gen for me. But I will start off and go through why I think. So this little Pokemon Piplup is a version, and when it kind of like stretches itself up, it puffs it out and it always falls over. So what this tells me about this Pokemon is that it struggles to regulate its own coordination. No one else is pushing over. You see here how it falls over on its own. And that is why I think it has some characteristics of dyspraxia. Then you've got Ash's Gligar. That's a little bat Pokemon. And it's always falling into things. It's a bit of a klutz. It's a bit clumsy. It's all over the place. However, when it evolves, it doesn't really have those characteristics. So would I count that as dyspraxia because maybe it grew out of it? I don't know how evolution works in that sense. But when he's in his first form, definitely. And lastly, no, not lastly, but nearly lastly, Misty Psyduck. Psyduck gets a lot of headaches, struggles with memory, does get a bit wobbly. And I think Psyduck shows more of the multiple traits of dyspraxia than the others do. Remember, to really be diagnosed with something, you need to have multiple traits rather than just one. And I think Psyduck hits home that a bit more. Admittedly, though, they're all Pokemon, which mean they can't have dyspraxia. But Ash, on the other hand, can. And Ash, you know, the Pokemon trainer, in the early seasons, you remember he's always kind of like smashing himself up against walls, falling over, getting in the mud. Like, he is all over the place. He has terrible timekeeping, which resulted in him getting Pikachu. His memory is not so great. He does struggle with coordination. You don't really see that in the later episodes or season, like 100, but in the early ones, I definitely saw a lot of myself in Ash Ketchum. I remember when I first started watching Pokemon, I think I was like 8 or something, and I couldn't wait to be 10 so I could get my Pokemon. I became 10 and I got nothing, but I do love it. Oh, Sailor Moon. Yeah, another Sailor Moon. Sailor Moon is great, and there's a few references of that show just because I've seen them. But the guy who works in the shrine is very attractive and Sailor Moon loves him, but also is terrible at his job. And he's always falling over, making mistakes, but he tends to be really good in other areas. So when I'm looking at characters, which I think might have been influenced by a neurodivergent condition, I'm looking at ones that don't have just one singular trait, but has like more extremes of the spectrum. So question to all of you, and I'm always really interested to know your answers to these. Is stereotyping okay when applied to cartoons? So we know stereotyping is bad in general life because we make unfounded assumptions about people, but is it okay in cartoons? This is really difficult, right? Because part of the reason we like anime maybe is because it's easy to understand in terms of like emotional sense, but those emotions are exaggerated. I genuinely don't know for this one. Most of you have said no, it's still negative. But if you think about cartoons, all they are stereotypes. You look at The Simpsons, Like, okay, Apu was a stereotype of a Indian and they got rid of him. Well, kinda. They replaced his voice actor. But then you've got like Fat Tony, who was a stereotype of Italian. Then you've got Willie, who's a stereotype of a Scottish man. You know, every character you look at is based on a stereotype. So I do wonder, though, can you truly get rid of stereotypes? Or is there a more positive way of portraying them? You tell me.
I think it depends on the content, how you look at it. It probably is seen as probably a negative aspect, but I think the overall picture you're supposed to look at, is it a factual thing? Is it funny? Is it humorous? You've got to look at the content overall in how to apply the stereotype. And in this content, I think it's fine. But it's in a funny, jokingly way, it's fine.
No, thanks for that. No, that's really interesting. Oh, Tim has said, does it make a difference if it is aimed at children or not? That's an interesting one as well, because children are still learning about the world around them. So maybe having a stereotype can be useful. Like, oh, if you wear this type of hat, you're obviously a baker. Or is it more dangerous for children because they don't have these perceived ideas of, say, oh, an air hostess, they must be female, they must be blonde, they must be ditzy. It's challenging, isn't it, really? Because some of my favorite cartoons are exaggerated versions of themselves. And in essence, that makes it a stereotype, but they also can be really negative. And, you know, if you watch the documentary, I think it's called The Problem with Apu, it's really interesting how something which me as a white man finds funny, someone of the like Indian culture grew up with continuous slurs and people thinking a certain way about him because of a character. All right, to finish up with on the last ones, which I think potentially relevant versions, have you seen any of these anime? Air, Black Cat, D Grey Man, or Fruits Basket? I've seen a little bit of Air and I've seen a bit of Fruit Basket. I haven't seen the other two though. Okay, I can see we've got one person who has seen a bit of Fruit Baskets. I remember, Tim, you saying you've seen Air before. Oh, no, you've seen Black Cat and D Grey Man. Oh, and Air, nice. April hasn't seen them, but she has heard of Fruit Baskets. Now, some of the reasons why these potentially might be particularly relevant is that in Air, much of the comic relief relies on the character tripping up and falling on their face whenever they start running. Again, pretty typical in anime, but I do see a lot of connections. Then you've got in Black Cat, it's hinted at a few times. Remember, we are looking at kind of like clumsiness, falling over, not because that is what dyspraxia is, but because that's the nearest stereotype which is portrayed. In Black Lagoon, the maid is completely terrible at housework. However, she did used to be a previous guerrilla fighter in other life, so it's not her forte. Then you got Grey Man. Miranda went through a lot of jobs thanks to dyspraxia, and in Fruit Baskets, the whole reason the person it discovers a curse is because they trip and grab onto someone. So coordination was the key plot point in how the series kind of moved on. Okay, onto the home stretch, Dyscalculia. And Dyscalculia, for those who do not know, is like dyslexia of maths. It's about people who struggle with maths and numbers and processing and orders and picturing things in their head. So we are going to be looking at characters who were very intelligent in other areas, but particularly struggled in maths. So start off with is Fullmetal Alchemist, which I was actually watching last night. The two key brothers, Ed and Al, in their younger days, found maths incredibly boring. So they would do alchemy-related maths instead. Now, what I like about this expression is that they didn't not do maths. They found an alternative way of learning maths which suited their way of learning, alchemy, which is exactly what it means to be neurodivergent. We often find alternative ways of solving the same problem. You know, some of the best artists, musicians, experts in the world have conditions which inherently make something more difficult for them, but they like the challenge and push past it. Though in Fullmetal Alchemist, this could be seen that the class is too easily, or maybe they don't like maths, so they just want to do things that related to alchemy. Again, none of these are completely perfect examples, but there were things in it which I think a lot of the community might resonate with, and as a result might like, either consciously or unconsciously. All right, now for Dragon Ball. And now this is in all the Dragon Balls, not just GT, but that's the one I've watched most recently. I've also watched Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. Goku is, he can't read, basically. He can't do numbers. You know, he's seen as like a little bit dim, but he's really smart and really intelligent in other areas. They continuously make jokes and jabs about his lack of like maths ability. It says this caused problems for a short while when he needed to pull off a synchronized attack. So there's been lots of instances where he has fallen short. And this is both when he was a young kid and well into adulthood, which, as we know, most of neurodivergences are lifelong. So it's one of the reasons why he made the list today. A few other examples which are worth noting is Manga, who we've already mentioned today, decided to teach maths for like 5 seconds and realized it wasn't for them. So again, a bit of a stretch, some of these, but I recommend having a look at all of these and thinking, do you agree or disagree? Or maybe you just want to watch them and find out a little bit more. And the last one I'm going to finish off with is diagnosed by the audience. And I'm really interested to know what are your views on this. So these are ones where people in the community, basically the deepest, darkest parts of Reddit, have said, actually, I see a lot of myself who is neurodiverse in this individual, but there is no other proof. There's no hints. None of the creators of the series have ever shown any inclination that this may or may not be the case. One, is it okay? Does it matter? Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it harmful? Is it, you tell me. So yeah, I would love to know any of these which you think potentially you could see it. So yeah, that's it. Now I'd love to know a few questions from any of you, or actually less than maybe questions, more like opinions or statements. Are there any shows which you've particularly resonated, ones that you felt a strong connection to? Do you have any other thoughts about why maybe the neurodiverse community tends to take a more of a gravitating pull towards this type of media? I would love to know. Bit of an interesting one today, right?
For me, it was just like escape from your worries and the real world, how what they call as a normal society see it. You want to get away from the world, and it's overwhelming. It's a way of escape, relaxing your thoughts and your mind. I think it's just looking at it a different angle. I think just it's like meditation a bit in a way.
Yeah.
Meditation for your mind, just escape from reality, what's really happening in the world with you right now, and just look at different aspects. I think for me. Thank you.
No, thanks. So maybe less about being relatable, but more about escapism, like finding a safe place, a world which it's okay to be different. In a lot of these series, it's normally about, say, a child who has a different ability, who is a bit shunned from the group, but eventually becomes a hero and takes over. And maybe that's the narrative that we want to connect to. Oh, nice. Rhea said this session was amazing. Thanks so much. You can come again. I like that. Well, if any of you really did like this session, we do have these every single week. The next one we do is going completely different from this one, but hopefully still useful. We're going to be looking at the different types of roles and jobs which may be best suited for those who have dyslexia. So do check that out. Oh, Lisa's got a message here. Is anime aimed more at young people, kids? I'm 42 and have just discovered it recently and really relate to the characters. Is this okay or weird? Oh, Tim has some stats. Let us know, Tim. From my perspective, though anime normally depicts kind of like teenage dramas, kids, it is, as Tim mentioned earlier on, more for adults. Like the themes, the tones, though it could be seen as a cartoon, it definitely isn't something that you might want to show your kids. I think it's completely fine. And Tim, if you do have any stats, let us know. But from my side, it's not weird at all. There's difference from watching Pokemon to watching Attack on Titans to watching some of the others.
Yeah, so I can't give an opinion on how trustworthy the sources are, but what I have here is that in Japan, over 90% of the population consume some form of anime. So that's going to include some adults for sure. On the West, internationally, it's about 50% of the population. And in the West, I've got American stats, and it's about 10% for of women, 15% for men, and that brings the overall to about 13% for America. And apparently that's growing year by year consistently.
So Lisa is completely fine. And as Jane has rightly mentioned, there are many anime which are just not appropriate for kids. And that is very true. I watched one anime with my mum and I didn't know anything about it. And honestly, I felt so uncomfortable. Should not have watched it with her. So yeah, it's definitely not for kids. It's a different art form. And that's all, everyone. But I really hope you enjoyed today. Here's our details to get in contact. Hope you have a great day. And I hope you enjoyed it. You know, it's a bit of a different session, but I thought it was interesting to explore and ask these questions, which some people are asking, maybe not many, but good nevertheless. All right, everyone. Well, that is it for the day. Thank you so much. Thanks for all the lovely comments and feedback. And hopefully I'll see you at the next one and future ones. All right. Bye all. Happy Thursdays.